very much for coming over.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. It's always great to catch up. Are you coming to Spain, Selenium Conference?
Nobody's paid for my plane ticket or sent me an
Yeah.
invite, but
Okay. All right.
but
Yeah.
if you know somebody, I will talk to my boss at Test Rigger, and he might maybe he'll send me on a plane ticket. We can work something out because he likes it every time I say Test Rigger. So
Yeah.
let's do that. But I got to shut up now, or else I'm gonna get in trouble. Marcus, it's all yours, man.
Great. Thank you, Paul. It's good to be here today. Thank you, and thank you to Marcel for that talk. I understand that the title of my talk is a little bit of a, I don't know what you call it, clickbait. It's something that it's a little bit of an attention grabber, and I think hopefully after I go through it, you'll understand why. And I hope that it will generate a lot of discussion. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions that are looking for interaction, impact, see how you're impacted by these kinds of things. But mostly, what I'm trying to do is part of my career for the past 2 years has not just been promoting test automation, best practices, stuff like that, but also trying to sort of deflate some of the breathless hype around what I see in AI, and to promote people like Marcel and Tariq King and Jonathan Wright and Jason Arbon, who are, in my opinion, kind of doing this right and carefully and reasonably, as opposed to basically just coming into my business and telling me that they're going to solve all my problems with magic. And so what we're going to talk about today, as I start to share my screen, is we're going to talk about the let's see, the entire window, entire screen. We're going to cover the regular drains on your productivity. I assume everyone can see my screen. We're going to cover the drains on your productivity. We're going to cover how it is being threatened and or augmented by AI, and then we're going to talk about how to sort of keep everything together. Um, and it didn't look like we were actually getting to see my screen. Yeah. Okay. What's interesting is that I think when I go full screen, I don't think it actually.
I think there's a couple options there. You can select the window, or you can select the entire screen.
I guess I should select the window.
I usually go full screen, so that works too.
Is that better? Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, great. Now I've got an eye on the chat on my phone, so if I look at that occasionally, that'd be great. But try not to get too distracted by it. Okay. So we're going to talk about the daily threats on your productivity, the problems that we're seeing come up with AI. And it might seem like I'm kind of a curmudgeon on AI, and I promise you that I'm not. I use it nearly every single day. I use it to enhance my work. I've gotten so much value out of it, but I can't sort of stomach all of the breathless hype around it without saying, all right, let's take this down a notch. This is a fantastic tool, but it is not, the end of the world and the final answer to all questions of life in the universe, which is what I'm seeing out of a lot of executives who have a lot of skin in the game. So what I want to do is make sure that we're being realistic. So let's start with productivity. I assume that I'm speaking to an audience of testers and developers who have been around for a while. Maybe you're new. You're seeing that in your daily work, there is an output you have to generate, which essentially amounts to, code. You got to output some code. You got to output some documentation. And it seems like the world is conspiring to keep you from doing that, even though that's what you were hired to do. That's the way it felt to me the whole time I was a developer in the testing industry. And that's the way it feels to a lot of people that I speak to. It's like, if you hired me to do coding, why is it that's barely I do it so rarely. It's kind of crazy. So how much time do you spend coding? How much of your time? I want to see in the chat. What does it look like? For me, when I was in industry, I could say if I got an hour a day, I was lucky. But I would like to see what other people say. there's a code, the software.com, or is it code.org? I don't remember. There's a link here on the bottom right. They had a survey a little while back, is during the pandemic, when you would think that productivity would be at its highest because everyone was sitting at home, 52 minutes of code time per day was all that developers could spend. Now that's kind of shocking to me, because you're hired to do a job, and this output of your job is, this is the one thing you're supposed to do, and yet you spend 52 minutes a day doing it, right? If someone is going to type 6 hours a day, I would love to understand. And I think you need to write a book and make a series of YouTube videos about how you do this, because it's not you. If you're not getting huge amounts of time per day, you're not lazy. It's that the world is conspiring to steal your attention. So what are these drains? What are these things happening? What are the big productivity killers? I'd love to hear some guesses in the chat, because my thinking was my productivity killer was my own attention deficit problems. Um, and in retrospect, I'm actually going to reject that, because I think that the problem is context switching. This is, to me, the primary problem. And I saw a stat linked in this link in the bottom right here, that when you are coding and someone either walks by your desk, or sends you a text, or sends you a Slack, or you decide to check your email, it's the interruption time to your cognitive flow is on average something like 23 minutes. So you're coding along, you're in a state of flow. We all know that feeling, and it is one of the best feelings in the world. We It's a pure dopamine hit to be able to sit there and just continue to do work at a competent level when you're getting the instant gratification of seeing that it works. And then you get a Slack that says, "Hey, can you attend this meeting?" And you come back to it and you're like, "Oh, I don't want to attend that meeting." And you get all in your head and you start to think about and dwell on, why am I in so many meetings? And then you're kind of lost for a long time. The stat says 23 minutes. It's hard to sort of reconcile that. That's based on some survey data and stuff like that. Uh, but it rings true, at least, that context switching is the main killer of productivity. What else? Well, merely the fact that people are facing change, volatility, and uncertainty, it causes this cognitive load as you're working that prevents you from getting into the flow in the first place. Is the thing I'm working on the right thing? Do my managers understand what I'm working on? Do they understand my priorities? And is something about to change? Because the answer to that is almost always yes. How much effort do I want to invest in this in order to be able to make sure that it's right? And then what are the expectations? What is the acceptance criteria? And if you haven't operated in an environment where they routinely give you a definition of done, or you're not giving yourself a definition of done, to say not just that the code will be complete and this feature works and that there are no bugs, but I am providing value to my user. That's when I'm done, is when I've provided value to my user, that kind of thing. That's when I'm done. If you're not working in that kind of environment, you're already experiencing a lack of confidence in what you're doing, which translates into a lack of productivity. When you react to technical debt, which I feel like I heard someone recently suggest that we retire the term technical debt because it's been co-opted and overloaded into many other things. But I think we all generally know what it's referring to. When part of your time is spent, somebody files a bug and you see that there's a problem because you haven't updated your log4j library since a few years ago, right after the unpleasantness with log4j, something like that. And you're trying to, go back and create unit tests and stuff like that. It's going to interrupt. You don't get to work on new features when that kind of thing is happening. So it takes you backwards. It doesn't add anything to the company's bottom line, but it's work that still has to be done. Not only a morale killer, but a productivity killer. Of course, bad management, leadership, and coaching. I don't want to impugn anyone, but we all know what this looks like. And working with uncooperative team members, or people who, I think it's generally, I find that when people are helping to mentor someone who's new in career, there's really no problem with that. What's the problem is when you have to answer the same question hundreds of times because your coworker won't take the time to internalize or really develop some skills or critical thinking, and you keep having to do their work for them. Probably nearly a lot of people here know what I'm talking about with that. Working across time zones is really difficult. And that is something that I think is almost universally faced at this point. We have teams in Europe, we have teams in India, we have teams in Australia. We have to deal with these time zones, and you have no choice in the matter. But what it leads to is, if you have a problem and only someone in India can fix it and you're in the West Coast, you pretty much only have one window per day of opportunity to communicate and fix these issues. So a problem that would take you 5 minutes if someone was in the office has to go back and forth over a week-long period when you iterate over it constantly. Now, of course, there's bad tooling. We've all seen this, where someone introduces this tool as the next best thing, and it's going to solve all of your problems, and then it turns out that all it does is create distractions. What I'm thinking about here is when developers have to get pulled into things like Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Salesforce, different tooling around that, where developers don't tend to approach using software as a tool exactly the same way that the folks who develop something like Jira created it for. So if you're moving from Jira to Salesforce for issue tracking, something like that, it wasn't necessarily designed for you. It was designed for someone on the business side. That kind of thing can really cause you some cognitive load and take your time away. And for me, I think the number one distraction is meetings. In the position I'm in right now, and I probably didn't do a very good job of introducing myself. The position I'm in right now, meetings consume a large amount of my time that takes me away. Now, customer meetings are fantastic. I can't get enough of those. I would do those all day if I could. But meetings, for determining, let's have a meeting to determine what's going to be the agenda for the meeting. That's going to be the setting for the 3-day meeting that we need to plan in order to be able to plan out the next year. Like it's a distraction. Now, my next question is, consider this list and add meetings, and then you add context switching, and tell me which of these things can AI solve? Sound off in the chat. Which of the things on this list can all the producers of AI tools help you with? I think we're heading near zero, but I would love to hear from everyone. Because we'll get to it in a minute, but the problems of productivity are only slightly augmented by the tooling around AI. And part of my hypothesis and my worry is that AI is now displacing the very thing that got us into the business of software development, as opposed to helping us with all the stuff that we hate, like the list from the previous slide. So when I hear people speak so effusively about what AI is going to do for my business, I start to wonder, well, what about all that other stuff that's actually the problem that I have? So something I hear a lot now. I work for Sauce Labs. I'm a principal strategic advisor to my customers. I've been in test automation for 25 years. I've been using Selenium since literally the day the Selenium and WebDriver projects were combined in 2008. I was working on Quick Test Professional for 3 years, and we had a really nice, robust suite of tests. And within 24 hours of the WebDriver and Selenium merger being announced and being rolled out, we decided to abandon Quick Test Professional and adopt the open source full bore. And within, I think it was 6 weeks, we were back to full parity in terms of getting our test automation back up and running with open source, as opposed to the really, really expensive QTP licensed test automation tools. The reason I'm bringing that up is just to say that I've been through the ringer and I made all the mistakes that everyone has talked about. And it's been a joy to work with customers at Sauce Labs to be able to sort of head off things at the past and say, no, don't do that. That's something that I can tell you a story that will to convince you that this is probably not the right approach. And lately, what people are asking me in, I think, nearly every single meeting I'm in is, what is your AI story? And I have such maybe a strange and unintuitive reaction to that, which is essentially my father is a carpenter. He builds beautiful picture frames. He's been a picture framer. He's 78 years old. He's still building picture frames. Um, I once asked him, "What would you do if you had $10 million?" And he said, "I'd just stop charging my clients, but I'd keep doing the same thing." It's a wonderful story. He's a carpenter and he's a painter. And to me, when I hear people ask, "What is your AI story?" It's almost like me walking into my father's house, gallery of beautiful paintings in beautiful frames, and saying, "Hey, Dad, what's your hammer story? How are hammers changing in your workshop? Because that's going to determine whether or not I buy one of your beautiful paintings." And what I feel like is being lost across the industry and being promoted by billionaires who may not care if I live or die is AI is the answer when AI is just a tool. It is just a thing in your toolbox that can or won't or will or might save you some time. And I don't understand why this question is so important. But it is so important that it becomes a board level decision that every company makes right now, where the board is starting to ask the product teams, what is your AI story? What is the story around hammers for you? How are you using hammers? We need to make sure that you're using hammers better than other people are using hammers. And there's a new kind of hammer out and it has a slightly longer handle. And we want to make sure that you're using it right. And I don't understand it. I don't know if there's something wrong with my brain. I don't know if it means I'm old. I don't know what's going on. I use the heck out of the AI stuff, but we use it to provide value to our customers. We don't use it as an end in itself. And I'm not sure, aside from the billionaires who are pushing this forward, who are in on it, I'm not sure what they have besides, this is a value for your customers. So I want to talk today about 3 inarguable problems of generative AI. Now, they're inarguable right now, but what I it's funny, as I was going through the slide deck, I kept thinking, how am I going to make it understood that I'm talking about right now, and that, maybe I'm going to list a problem that's inarguable right now, but it won't be forever. And I just realized I just need to make a caveat at the beginning, because every single slide on this page could say, like, not yet, or at this point, or now, or for now. In the future, if you look at this slide deck, it might seem a little bit silly, because these problems will probably be solved at some point. But at this point, right now, today, 2025, in March, these problems have not been solved, even with DeepSeek. So let's talk about these problems as they are right now, what that might mean for the future, how that contributes to your productivity decline, and then we're going to wrap it all up at the end with some suggestions on, how to keep an eye on these things, how to view them with just a tiny bit more. I guess I call it skepticism, or questioning, or challenging the assumptions than people are doing right now in the industry as they promote these things breathlessly. So first, let's talk about hallucinations. I think everyone here knows what I'm talking about when I say hallucinations. You could also call this, what I like to think of it as, is mistakes. These are when the AI model makes a mistake in its. I was about to say logic and reasoning, but that's actually a very poor choice of words for this. As AI is generating an answer using its random number generator based on its pre-trained model, sometimes it chooses the wrong thing. So it gives a response that's not coherent with what humans know to be true. Lots and lots of examples of these. Some of these examples are old. Dinosaurs in the Cretaceous period were able to build a successful civilization by living communally and developing a variety of skills. The funny thing is, I've been using this example for a little while, and truthfully, actually not sure that's a hallucination, because it's kind of true by some definition of it, but certainly is not consistent, coherent with what humans know to be true. The world record for crossing the English Channel entirely on foot is held by Christoph Wanderach of Germany, who completed the crossing in 14 hours and 51 minutes. It just made this up. And when you sign up for Claude, it tells you, we're going to generate incorrect or misleading information. I think it was Sundar Pichai who gave an interview 3-4 months ago, the CEO of Google, who said that hallucinations are an inherent feature of generative AI, generative LLMs, an inherent feature, which means to me not only is it not solvable with the current tech and the current LLMs, but they're not really even trying to solve it in the basic foundations of how LLMs work. The broad thinking for the past couple of years has been that hallucinations will be solved by more training data. But there's the thought that's emerging recently, especially around OpenAI's attempted release of 4.5 and 5.0, that not only is the training data too expensive, it's going to be too expensive, but the training data does not exist to eliminate human hallucinations. And I'm not even sure it could, because we're still dealing with random number generator based on huge volumes of data that include deliberately unreliable sources that cannot be curated by with enough time that we have left on the planet. These are not solvable using current day LLMs, which means that there is always a risk, and we believe that this will asymptotically approach zero. Always a risk that the output is not reliable. It's a mistake. What do we do about this? Well, we can fine tune our algorithms. We can fine tune the models. We can fine tune the data that we feed into it. And that would get us into RAG models, which Marcel talked about a little bit, which is more like a bespoke model for you that will limit the universe of data that it pulls from. So that, why in the world would I want my test case data being generated by a model that was trained on The Onion and all the works of Shakespeare? So then there's chain of thought prompting, which of course Marcel taught about earlier, which is also leading the model by the nose to try to get it to hone its answer as it goes by narrowing the funnel of data that it pulls from in order to build its answers. And then we have the concept, which I think has been roundly dismissed at this point, of getting an AI to be trained on the output of another AI. And I read this a while back, and I apologize for not citing a source, but that there by the 9th generation, I think, of an AI being trained on another AI, by the 9th generation, it was absolute garbage. It was completely, the output was completely untrustworthy, which had Jathan Sadowski on Twitter coined the term Habsburg AI, meaning that if you have these AIs that are being trained on AIs, it's similar to having brothers marry sisters for 9 generations in a row, and then you get this Habsburg jaw or Targaryen madness if you're a Game of Thrones fan. So we need to make sure that people understand these things, educate people on the limitations of the model that was used to train the AI. Encourage verification practices. These are a little bit common sense. You need to also improve prompt design. You make iterative, interactive. You incorporate external tools and checks, which is a lot easier said than done. But this is the problem. The problem here is that there's probably no universal answer for the kinds of externals and checks you have to put on these tools. And then you can adjust the model interface, continuous education, and just keep yourself educated and updated. Every time I give a presentation like the one I'm giving right now, I have to spend 3 to 4 hours researching and making sure that what I've got is up to date, and it is still out of date. And the last time I gave this presentation was less than 6 weeks ago. This is constantly changing, especially if you follow people like Jonathan Wright and Jason Arbon. It is constantly changing. And there's Hugging Face. There's a whole bunch of folks out there who really are following this stuff and keeping up to date and publishing a lot about it. Now, the second problem that's inarguable about these is non-deterministic output. Now, this can be good. Like if you're trying to write something and you're trying to tailor it, you're trying to, you see a lot of this with marketing output where people are sending out sales stuff. Your inboxes are probably flooded with AI generated slop around this. But sometimes it can be good to vary the output that you get, because if you're doing some sort of a creative endeavor, one of my favorite things to do with an AI chatbot is to brainstorm. if I don't have a coworker available, if I don't want to bother them on Slack to prevent the context switching, I can brainstorm with even an older model of ChatGPT and have a really, really great session where sometimes it'll lead me the wrong way, sometimes it'll give me the wrong answer, but I almost always come out of it with a better set of thoughts than I had going into it. And I think part of that is credit to the non-deterministic output because it's always pulling from the model and always using its random number generator to vary the answers just a little bit. And I think it can be a strength. What it's bad for is, I mean, how many times as a tester have you enjoyed the fact that your tests are different every single time you run them? That's why I was particularly enamored with Marcel's answer about the agentic part of the test execution, meaning he generates the test using an AI. He has an agent that understands the website, and then a separate agent that actually generates the code and marries that to the intent of the user. But once it comes to executing the test, he has a deterministic script that is run that has nothing to do with the LLM and doesn't cost more tokens either. So if you want something that is the same every single time, you need to generate output in a way that will keep it the same every single time. That will be a snippet of code that you reuse over and over and over again, or something like that. And then when you want to maintain the test, or something changes and you have to regenerate the test, you regenerate it from the same agents that created the original one, but you don't use the agent to do the execution itself and give yourself a high chance that it's going to be variable outcome, if that makes sense. What do we do about this? We use LLMs for what they're good for. You brainstorm, you explore ideas. Having a conversation with ChatGPT in order to, and I use ChatGPT generically, so I apologize if you're a fan of Gemini or Claude. If you have a conversation with one of these LLMs and you really explain what you're trying to accomplish, test plans are a good thing. Definition of done is a very good thing that I've been able to get it to do. These are fantastic ways to do this. I have a typo here. LLMs might not do the analysis. They're sometimes not very good at the analysis. When you say, here's a whole ream of data, give me some conclusions. It's not real good at that. For that, I still think machine learning, statistical analysis, using an Excel spreadsheet and putting, standard deviation, basic charting and graphing, stuff like that. But when it comes to, when you have a chart, explaining what's there, LLMs are brilliant at that. So use the tools for what they're good for. And one thing, before I get to the policy, one thing that I think is extremely important to keep in mind is that LLMs were engineered to try to make you happy. That may not be the right way to say it. There's probably a better AI way to say that. I could talk to Dr. Reed at Sauce Labs to find out what the way to say that is. LLMs are designed to try to give you what you ask for. So if you say, I need documentation for an API call that will allow me to pull GitLab data out and put it into Snowflake, there is a good chance it's going to tell you something in there, some variable, some part of the endpoint, some data structure, something in there will be something that it made up. It just created on the spot. You can't trust that it actually went and understood the contract of the API, generated the output, and then put it in place. So it's trying to gear its intent towards what the API should have been, based on how it understands the world and how it understands whatever cutoff date for its training, how the world worked at that point, and then give you a snippet. Now, it's still going to save you huge amounts of time when you tried to get it to do something like that. It's just important to understand that script probably won't work the first time you run it. You're probably still going to have to go to the documentation and make a tweak. But I'll bet you it can take an 8-hour task and make it a 2-hour task. Just try to remember going into it that it's trying to make you happy. So there are going to be certain things in the output that you're going to want to question right off the bat. And you can't just copy paste and send it to whoever's asking for it. Now, the most important thing to me is that you need to have a policy. We still don't know. The litigation hasn't really even begun to begin around training data, IP, intellectual property, how people are looking at this data, what it's using, where it's plagiarizing from, and who's going to be legally liable for this in the future, because I have a feeling to some extent that it will happen. We don't know for sure. If if we were in a just world, I think this would have actually started to happen a lot already, but it hasn't. So don't know what's going to happen. I just think that you should protect yourself and have a policy for your product, for your processes, for your employees, in order to make sure that they are protecting themselves and not using data from the model that they shouldn't be using, and certainly not feeding your data or your customers' data into a model that will be trained in the future for someone else to use. So you have to have a policy, you have to keep it local. I know that one customer conversation I had 6 months ago, we were at a customer site and they asked, "What are you doing with AI? What's your AI story?" My favorite question. And I could tell that there was a desire to answer this question with all sorts of optimistic statements about what we're doing and all these forward looking ideas for what we've got. But before we said any of that, what we said was, our plan is not to use any of your data to train a model that other people are going to then use. That's the first thing we can say, is that there's absolutely no way we're going to use LLMs to put any of your data at risk. And since we had a policy, it saved us months of extra legal review by the customer, who would have been fairly alarmed if we said, well, we're just going to use all this data to generate a whole bunch of stuff and it'll be fantastic. It'll be magic for you. So have a policy. Now let's talk about the third inarguable problem. Now, this is the least inarguable problem, but I don't think that the concerns are over yet. And that is that companies are pouring billions, and we might even be up to a cool trillion at this point, of the amount of money that's being poured into AI and AI endeavors. And I know that DeepSeek throws a wrench in that, but I don't think it's as big a wrench as people have treated it as such at this point. OpenAI lost $540 million in 2023 against $1.6 billion in revenue. Continuing the trend, they lost $5 billion in 2024 against $4 billion in revenue. They spent $9 billion to lose $5 billion. And these people are going to want their money back. Right now, when you pay $20 a month for ChatGPT or Anthropic or whatever, every single time you enter a query, money is lost into the ether. It goes away, which means that you're not paying near the rack rate of what OpenAI is paying, even for the power consumption of these models as they are being trained right now. The estimate that I have seen, I don't know what to trust. I've seen an estimate, I think it was Dr. Jeffrey Funk, who estimated that it's something like 10x, like a $20 ChatGPT subscription should cost something more like $200 in order to actually meet the cost, including all the investment and all the data centers and all the power, in order for these things to work. What I am afraid of, what I am terrified of, and I would point you to Ed Zitron and his work. He is, so if I sound like a curmudgeon, he is me times 100. And I think that sometimes he goes a little too far, but he's doing his homework and he's citing his sources. Essentially, there's a subprime crisis coming. I liken it to what happened in 2008 with all the different things that happened back then, where things are being subsidized to a degree right now where everyone's losing money on every single query and every single customer that they've got. And the MAUs and weekly active users are not catching up to the investment that people have made. People are canceling, Microsoft is canceling contracts on data centers right now because they're essentially not seeing what's going on. And as a result of all this, as a result of the hype, and as a result of people like Sam Altman saying, this is going to fundamentally change the core of how our brains work and how society works and how the economy works at a fundamental level. As a result of people saying stuff like that, these trillions of dollars are going into this. And the most I think we can say is that, well, programmers have gotten a small productivity boost with some pretty great tools. And I'm not sure where else we've got. I mean, when was the last time you used a chatbot on a website that you actually enjoyed? Was it a good experience? I haven't had one yet. Now, I understand people say this is the worst it's ever going to be. It's going to get better. I'm actually not sure. Maybe. This is where I sound like the old guy. What I worry about is we are embedding AI into the products and tools that we make, and we are pushing them out to our customers right now. And we're calculating an ROI on those things, saying basically, if I'm paying 2 cents per million tokens, and I have this many customers who are consuming this much of my AI work, that means that I'm making a profit because I'm giving them a lot of extra value, and I'm going to get more customers as a result. One day, when the subprime crisis thing starts to kick in and these people decide that they want to get their money back from all the investments they've made, they're going to start charging the actual token cost, which means you are going to incur the token cost, which means you are going to pass the token cost on to your customers. So the ROI you're calculating in 2025 is not at all the same as the ROI will be in 2035 or even 2030. Now, I hear people already DeepSeek and the costs are going down in quantum computing. Of course, all of that might make a difference, but this money, I don't believe, is yet can be considered a sunk cost. These people want their money back, and you're not just going to be paying for the costs, the reduced costs of data centers and quantum computing. You're not going to just be paying for the reduced cost of that. You're going to be paying for all the R&D and all the money that's being burned in a furnace right now by OpenAI, Microsoft, Anthropic, Grok, everyone. That's my worry. May not happen, may not come true. That's my worry. Then let's talk about energy consumption, which I'm not going to talk about this for very long, but from what I understand, we expect that at some point AI is going to eclipse most nations, most small nations, in terms of how much it consumes. This is a slightly outdated estimate, probably. This probably came from 6-8 months ago, and I think things have accelerated since then. But it worries me. And the problem is, I don't really see anyone who cares about this. The only way people care about this is by saying quantum computing will fix it. Maybe. The lack of training data is already obviating the benefits that we can get to some extent from quantum computing. But I don't know that for sure. The thing that I worry about is that every single time you run a query against ChatGPT, it consumes the electrical equivalent of running a 60 watt light bulb for 3 minutes. Every single time. It's a huge amount of power to have it compose a poem about whatever you have on your mind. I have heard estimates that with a deep research module that ChatGPT just released, which you can get for $200 a month, a single query can cost up to $1,000 in tokens. This is not the pricing model we have right now is not going to stay the same. And there are a whole bunch of questions about whether or not DeepSeek is really real. Who knows? It's too fresh. I can't comment necessarily, but I just don't believe that we're going to be saved by these optimizations anytime soon. We might be. I doubt it. These people want their money back. So then what's happened? Has AI been a positive or negative to you? And has it been thrust at you, or did you seek it out? I'm a little curious. Remember that 52 minutes a day? The best estimates I've seen that these tools can help you with is by improving your productivity by 30%. Doesn't that just mean that we're going from 52 minutes a day to 67 minutes a day? Is the productivity gain of 15 minutes a day for a developer, is that worth the $1 trillion investments? Now, there's a lot of stuff coming out just recently, and including Microsoft CEO saying basically the world has yet to turn any of today's AI hype and spending into meaningful lift in the actual economy. Now, I know it's early days. But is it? We're over 2 years in. Researchers trained AI on flawed code. It became a psychopath. ChatGPT and other chatbots are hurting publishers even worse than we thought. The entire internet is being polluted by AI slop. We have all seen it. I have my index finger is tired from clicking the X button on all the Facebook posts. And the thing I'm worried about most is that there's a survey recently. I've got a link here to point to it. So far, these tools are costing us productivity. They are not actually helping. Now, I'm not talking about Marcel's. I'm not talking about the ones that are going through and doing this deliberately. In fact, I'll get to that in a minute. I'm talking about the whole ecosystem of magic that says, "Hey, let's just stick these in your hands and just let you run free with it without a policy, without a strategy, anything." I'm not going to dwell on that because I'm running out of time. But essentially, here are my recommendations for staying productive and making sure that we can all do some critical thinking and keep the slop at bay, keep the hype out of this, and then let's make sure that we keep this straight. First, we must admit that there is no magic. There is also no winner in the market. I see Mr. Miyagi says that the market sets the prices if there are no name LLMs at a low price, the big players can't charge sky high prices. I hope that you're correct, Mr. Miyagi. I hope so. What I am afraid of is what normally happens, which is that the monopoly converges, and the coalition of people who have sunk the billions of dollars in will close ranks and not let the little players in. I hope you're right. I feel like lately we've seen a lot of really, really great tools get boxed out of the market or get acquired and then buried. Consider the value before you choose a tool. Understand that the tool is a hammer and that you need to make sure that the hammer can provide value to your users. And this is the kind of thoughtfulness that people like Jonathan Wright, Tariq King, Jason Arbon, Marcel are putting into their tools. What is valuable about it? Not what can it do, what is valuable about it? The tool is just a tool. Agents won't save us. To me, it's funny. When I first heard the word agentic, probably last year sometime, I heard the word agentic, and immediately I knew that's going to be the next big word. That's going to be the word that everyone latches onto because you never really use that. It's not really a big word in the English language. It's not really a word that's been used a whole lot, but everyone knows kind of what it makes sense. It's just perfect buzzword. That was just like nailed it on that one. And when I first learned about agents, I thought, okay, that's really cool. Let's lower our expectations because AI isn't a junior programmer like people say it is. AI is more like a toddler with a really big lexicon. And what do I really want to give a toddler the ability to take my credit card and book a flight? No. Let's lower our expectations. The kind of agent that Marcel is talking about, an agent with a single purpose to understand something or to generate something or to create something small or to interact with my IDE and connect it up to my CI/CD platform. These things with modest expectations and modest abilities, as opposed to let's create an agent that can just load my dishwasher for me. I mean, it's just agents are not the answer to anything. Agents are a really, really interesting tool that's going to help us make these things practical and useful. But they themselves do not address hallucinations or non-deterministic outputs, and they certainly don't address token costs. You need to understand where your data is going. What is it being used for after you send it off into the ether? And then understand the toolmaker's thought process. I really enjoyed how Marcel went through the evolution of how his process came to be. And I think it's fantastic that he was able to take us through that and really show the thoughtfulness that he was putting into this and how his tool is going to separate from the rest because he's being transparent about it. And he's not just telling you that it's magic. He's actually showing you what it does. Seek out experts like Paul and Marcel, and Jason Arbon, Terry King, Jonathan Wright, Andrew Knight, Angie Jones, many, many, many more. Here is my list of words that on the left are the ones that when I see these words in marketing copy around AI tools, I get a little nervous that people are selling me some snake oil. If they say it eliminates effort, it automates things fully. If it understands, it knows. It doesn't understand or know anything. It has a model. It is a random number generator that is remarkably good and remarkably fast at putting things together that reflect an understanding but do not actually exhibit understanding. Reasoning, they don't actually reason. They are very, very, very good at iteratively putting things together that appear like they are reasoning. If they say they're going to revolutionize something, run. If they say that they're going to offset effort, assist you, help you, optimize things, aid you, enable you, enhance you, streamline, analyze, explain, or if they moderate their promise, then I think they're probably being thoughtful and honest with me. And like I said, remember the problem of token subsidies. Deep research is rumored to cost up to $1,000 per query. OpenAI is on track to potentially lose 10 figures in 2025. When the bubble pops, it might come for them first, but we don't know. Now, what I would say is stay productive by using the tools to save time. Don't always assume they will save money, because the price we see now is not the price we will always see. Probably. Can't predict the future. So, like I said earlier, Microsoft canceled 200 megawatts of data center contracts and over a gig of existing letters of intent on future data centers. That is more power than is consumed by the Bay Area, the entire Bay Area outside of data centers, which means Microsoft might be losing confidence in this market, even though Satya Nadella in every interview still is quite effusive about it and very, very vague. OpenAI will need a huge infusion of money before the end of the year. Let's see if SoftBank steps up. Let's see if SoftBank is still a bank. And OpenAI is pivoting away from the bigger is better story. They are now trying to moderate expectations. And I'm talking in the last week, they have started to, let's be happy with, what we've got. Altman's statements have been very interesting the last few days. And I believe that is the end of my slide. Not magic. Don't trust the industry to maintain this level of momentum, because when the bubble pops, the good tools will stay behind, but we'll see a very different tone in the hype cycle. Right. Be careful when embedding AI into your product for resale. Now, I understand that this whole thing was a curmudgeonly rant against all the stuff that we've been hearing about for months now. But I really do think that there's a lot to consider when you're trying to do these things, and that you can stay wildly productive. Like I said, my favorite use of these tools is to brainstorm and to create scripts to connect pieces of software together. So I think there was an endeavor where I was creating an IDE plugin for JetBrains. And I mean, the basic, even ChatGPT 3.5 was able to help me so much. I would say that it turned an 8-hour process into a 2-hour process, which I then had to take still 3 more days to hand tweak in order to get it going. But it taught me so much about exactly how you need to do this kind of thing and how you need to approach these kinds of problems. It was really, really great. I'm sorry, Paul, if you've been telling me that I had time limits, I apologize that I missed those. I wasn't looking at the right window.
We're right on schedule. It's fine.
Okay, great.
We're cool. We didn't have a whole lot of questions. A couple that we had, I actually handled and answered. I did give you a shout out for Sauce Labs, the links that's out there. I will tell you, it's tradition. We tend to go a few minutes over because I usually have some stuff to talk about. Marcus, can you hold up? Can you hang out for like 5 more minutes?
Yes.
And hopefully if everybody can. By the way, this is recorded. You could check out, if you're looking at YouTube, you can also, I believe once this is done, it's immediately available. You can watch it over again. So if you miss something, you can catch it again on the YouTube channel. I posted that up on the LinkedIn version, so because it'd be redundant on the LinkedIn channel. So I wanted to actually, oh my gosh, you made so many things. One thing you asked was, what is the best experience anyone's had with a chatbot, and I'll mention that one of our previous people we were talking to, and his name is of course going to escape me because I'm freaking old. All I can tell you is he's got the same name as a musician, and if you can come up with that name, like
Jim Holmes.
No, plays the musician like plays a flute or something like that. It's the same exact name except he's an automation, not a musician. But anyway, I'll get to my point.
Right.
He was talking about these things are just doing cold readings like some fortune tellers will do, and generic stuff like this. And he mentioned Pi AI, and I happened to go jump in. I'm like, I never heard of Pi AI. And I jumped onto that. And the thing started hitting on me. It was making me feel nice about myself. It was cool. It's gotten a little better since then. That was about a year and a half ago.
Never trust Tinder again.
No, God, not married. Tinder at all. You also mentioned hallucinations. I did mention in the chat over here is that one of the solutions I saw one company do was that they had an issue where the AI validation says, check that the page has two people speaking on the screen. And it would say, oh, that failed because there are only two people talking on the screen. That's the pass. And what the solution was to ask a second AI instance. Does that make sense? And the second would go, no, there are two people, it passes. It's good. And kind of reduce the hallucinations and stuff down to practically zero on that.
That's cool. That's cool. I mean, I'm hopeful that these will have like that in itself doesn't solve hallucinations. It helps mitigate them.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's where we're headed, and I think we'll get really good at it. I don't think we can. We always need to ask that question. Like if someone tells you I've solved hallucinations, just run. They're a charlatan.
I think everything is, there's a lot of people want to get everything to zero, and I don't think you can never get to zero, or they're trying to get to 100%. When are we going to be done with automation? You get 100% coverage. And I usually tell them when your company goes out of business because your developers aren't adding any new features. I'm always 80% behind or 20% behind the developers. That as long as they're developing, I'll be working on adding more test cases for the 80% stuff that they add.
Yeah, right. Cool. Well, I mean, this was I tried to prepare this in a way that drops enough bombs to get people thinking, but I'm not trying to discourage the use of AI. I just want to say critical thinking is a paramount importance, and we really just need to make sure that we're holding people's feet to the fire in terms of not overpromising, not underdelivering, and I'm so afraid of all the money that's sloshing around in the system at this point that I don't know. I don't know what to do about it, except I'm not going to be like investing much at this point. I just feel like it's already overdone.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. The perspective I have is, AI is kind of like the difference between using a pickaxe to go and mine gold, and now you've got a jackhammer to mine gold.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are saying that jackhammer is going to put the gold miners out of business. No, it's just going to make them more efficient. Yeah. Just don't try and jackhammer into your own foot. That would be a bad situation.
Right. Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah, you still have to guide it. And so I think it's great. I think Marcel's approach is the right approach. And I really, what I would do is I would plead. There's 30, 40 companies out there who are doing, kind of similar kinds of tools to generate test code using an LLM. And I would just entreat all of them to explain your process, explain your thoughts, tell us how you arrived at the approach you've got right now. Because if you there's a couple players in the market who are just saying it's the world's first fully automated. Like, no, it's not. Nope. Stop right there. You're a charlatan.
Yeah, you might get 80%. That's as far as I go.
Yeah.
So
80% is great. We should never knock getting to 80%.
Yep. I'm agreeing with that. Absolutely. Well, we're about 5 minutes past our time over here, and I want to let Dan get back to doing what he's doing. I wanted to say thank you, first of all, Marcus and Marcel, for joining us. We'll definitely have both of you back. We always have enjoyed. Marcus, is this our first time or second time we've had you here?
Second time. We talked
It's
about accessibility last time.
That's what I was thinking of. I get
Yeah.
to talk to so many people. I was trying to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did I speak to you on
Understood.
somewhere else? But yeah, we'll definitely have you back. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Always insightful. Thanks to Dan. Thanks to Testomat for hosting these and continuing to do that. And like I said, I play around with TestRigger. There's no code, no page object model that we play around with, and nobody believes that I do that. And Marcus, one more time, shout out for your company over there.
Sauce Labs.
Sauce Labs. There you go.
We have the largest and best enterprise grade cloud for mobile device testing, and we use AI for good and to give you value by analyzing the results of the tests you've already run, rather than magically trying to, work on the other side where we don't pretend to understand intent, because we're on the wrong side of the aisle for that, if that makes sense. And so our job is to give you value in the tests you've already run and tell you what's actually happening inside your software, as opposed to just, some measure of like, well, you ran 12 tests. Well, I don't care that I ran 12 tests. What do they do? That kind of thing.
And by the way, our two companies are actually partners with each other. So,
yep.
And if you guys have a company of your own, Testomat, I believe, partners with you guys as well. If not, they should. That's so with that, I'm going to wrap up everything over here. Again, thank you, everybody. Any final words, Marcus?
No, I appreciate your inviting me, and I appreciate the audience. I appreciate the interaction. We had a lot of folks chiming in on the chat, and I hope I got to everything. It's great. Thank you very much.
Great. All right, everybody, we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. I think Larry Goddard will be hosting the next one, my co-author on our book. That being said, thank you very much for joining us, and have yourself a great day.